dogs and children. In Mark 7, we read about a woman from the region of Syrophoenicia. She came to Jesus because her daughter was suffering from an evil spirit. When she asked Jesus for help, he responded in a way that seemed harsh. He said it wasn't right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. At that time, Jewish people considered dogs to be unclean, and they viewed Gentiles, non-Jews, in a similar way. This shows how Jews looked down on Gentiles during that period. Jesus spoke to the woman in this way because she was a Gentile. If he had healed her daughter without saying anything, many Jews would have criticized him harshly. By comparing the woman to a dog, Jesus was revealing two important truths. The first is that God's grace is not given based on someone's background or gender, but on a humble and sincere heart. Even when Jesus spoke to her in a way that might have seemed insulting, the woman was not offended. She didn't argue or get angry. Instead, she humbly admitted her unworthiness and replied that even dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. This sincere and humble attitude is what drew God's grace to her, and the same is true today. God never ignores a heart that is humble and sincere. For example, when King Hezekiah was told he would die, he turned to God with tears and a humble heart, and his life was extended. In the same way, a humble and sincere heart can even change the direction of God's plan. The second reason Jesus responded to her this way was to show that God's grace and salvation are also for Gentiles. This wasn't a new idea. Even before Jesus came, God had already revealed his plan to include non-Jews. For example, in the genealogy of Jesus found in Genesis, Tamar, Judah's daughter-in-law, was a Canaanite. Ruth, the main figure in the book of Ruth, was a Moabite. And Rahab, mentioned in the book of Exodus, was also a Canaanite. All of these women were Gentiles, but they were included in the family line of Jesus. Also, through the story of Jonah being sent to save the people of Nineveh, God showed that his plan included Gentiles. These events in the Bible clearly show that God's grace was never limited to one group. But in Jesus' time, many Jews believed they were the only people loved by God. They looked down on Gentiles as if they were impure. Is this kind of thinking only a problem from the past? Sadly, no. In the early days of Christianity in some countries, believers were often mistreated by non-believers. But as the number of Christians grew, the opposite sometimes happened. Believers began to treat non-believers unfairly. Some Christians, instead of staying humble after receiving God's grace, started to feel superior, as if they were always right and others were always wrong. But we must remember this. The only difference between a believer and a non-believer is whether someone has accepted or rejected God's grace. That's all. Think about it. Who is greater? The one who gives grace or the one who receives it? Clearly, it is God who gives grace. But instead of lifting up God, we often lift up ourselves. Our pride and wrong attitudes can block the flow of God's grace to others. God wants his grace to reach everyone who is humble and open. Let's not let our personal biases get in the way. We must not act like we own God's grace. If we do, we are denying God himself.
구독, 좋아요, 알림 설정 해주세요. Subscribe, like, set notifications.